Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Would like to start our webinar, and we are really happy that Dr. Imtiyaz Yusuf Sahib is here. He's a wonderful friend. And interesting thing is that he's probably the only unique expert on Islam and Buddhism and Muslim-Buddhist relations. And in this era, when we had problem in Rohingya, Myanmar, and when we have problem in Sri Lanka, Buddhist and Muslims, unfortunately, we need those expertise. So we have invited him, Dr. Imtiyaz Yusuf. He's the senior fellow here in Georgetown University's Al-Wali Center for Muslim-Christian Understanding. And also, he's the assistant professor and director of the Center for Buddhist-Muslim Understanding in the College of Religious Studies at Mahidol University in Thailand. So he came here for some other conferences. So we requested him to come here in ICNA CSJ and address the Rohingya issue, because that issue is very hot among the Muslim community, especially among the Muslim American community. So his topic will be Rohingya crisis, strategy for a sustainable solution. So he will be speaking, inshallah, so I will invite him. So he will be speaking around 45 minutes. Then we have plus minus, then we'll have question answer. So Dr. Imtiyaz Yusuf, thank you.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. First of all, I'd like to thank Dr. Zahid Bukhari. He's a very old friend. He's old friend not in terms of age. We know each other for some time, maybe about 10 years, when he was also at Georgetown University, where I was a visiting professor on Islam in Southeast Asia. I'm going to talk about the issues about the Rohingya crisis, which has become suddenly very, very important, suddenly very, very critical, and suddenly much of interest to everyone. But before I do that, I would like to say something about myself, then we can get further. I am not from Thailand, so when people look at me, they say, oh, you are not a Thai. If I say, and I'm not from India, I'm not from Pakistan, I'm not from Bangladesh. I am born in Tanzania, of an Indian family, which migrated from India. I studied of course, born there. I did my early education there. I did my BA in Pune University in India. I did my MA Islamic Studies from Aligarh Muslim University. I did my PhD at Temple University with my friend here, Dr. Fai, at the Department of Religion. And at that time, my research was mostly not about Buddhism, but I studied Buddhism at that time. It was one of the required course. And then I moved to Thailand. I'm in Thailand for the last 28 years. So what I studied but before I do that, when I was studying in Aligarh Muslim University, I had the habit of sitting in the library and going through the shelves. That time you didn't have Professor Google with you. So I would spend my time sitting in the library's text. And I came across an article in a journal from Sri Lanka. It talked about early contacts between Islam and Buddhism. And that got me startled. And I said, oh, is there such thing? Because we know about relations between Muslims and Christians, Muslims and Hindus. And it was by somebody known as Professor S.M. Yusuf, not related to me. And he was a professor of Islamic studies. He was from Pakistan, but he spent some time there in Sri Lanka at Pardenia University. So that got me started. Now, when I went to Thailand for the last 28 years, and I've been living among Buddhists now, with living Buddhism. See, whenever we interact with other people, when we engage in interfaith dialogue, we also need to know not only the bookish knowledge, but also about how they live and what are their understanding of their religion and how we look at each other. So my benefit was that I studied with Professor Ismail Al-Faruqi. For me, his main contribution is in the area of history of religions. I speak 6 languages. I was globalized before globalization. I say like that. I'm not the child of Pepsi Cola globalization. So my globalization is about languages, cultures, and religions. I speak English, which is nearly a mother tongue. I speak Swahili, which is an African language. I speak Hindi and Urdu by studying in India. And I speak Thai and Arabic. Arabic, of course, for Islamic studies, and Thai over there. So what I am seeing today, for the last 28 years, I'm living in Thailand. I have a paper just published in the Oxford Islamic Studies Online on the Rohingya crisis. But you see, When I went to Thailand for the first time and I sat in a taxi and the driver asks me, "What's your religion?" And I said, "I'm a Muslim." And he said, "Oh, you're a Muslim, so you don't eat pork and you have 4 wives." I said, "Is this the definition of Islam?" So this is how has been the relation between Muslims and Buddhists in Southeast Asia. Today, Southeast Asia is only part of the world where Muslims and Buddhists exist in large numbers. Southeast Asia, I mean the 10 ASEAN countries, from Myanmar, Cambodia, Thailand, Laos, Vietnam, Singapore, Brunei, Malaysia, Indonesia. In fact, the largest Muslim country, Indonesia, is located over in Southeast Asia. So if you look at the demography, 42% of Southeast Asia is Muslim, thanks to Indonesia. And 40% of Southeast Asia is Buddhist. There are only 10% who are Christians, 10 or 12% in Philippines. But Muslims don't know much about each other. We know much more about other religions. But Asia is rising. China is rising. India is rising. And we Muslims have not been engaging with the Buddhist countries. But you'll be surprised to know the history of relations between Muslims and Buddhists go back to the 7th century. It doesn't begin with the Rohingya issue. It's like this. I always compare it this way. Whenever I come to the US and I give my best lecture on Islam, there are 2 questions at the end of my lecture. What is the status of women in Islam and what is jihad? So whenever I say to anybody I'm doing Islam and Buddhism, they say, what is Rohingya? I said, please keep that question to the last before I go into that area. So Islam and Buddhism has a long relation. Many people from Pakistan may not know that the first interaction between Muslim and Buddhist took place in Sindh, when Muhammad bin Qasim arrived there and several other Muslims, because they were trading from Arabia to China. So when they came there, they met the Buddhist monks and they saw Buddhist temples. So they wrote to Hajjaj bin Yusuf to ask the ulama what their opinion about how to relate with the Buddhists over there. And the reply came from Damascus saying, don't attack their monks and don't destroy their temples. Treat them as Ahl al-Kitab, people of the book. This is how the first interaction takes place. But make them pay jizya. So this is how Islam works. This is how Islam relates with other religions, because by that time Islam started spreading in Southeast Asia. In South Asia, from Pakistan. Pakistan has many Buddhist centers right up north in Gandhara, and Pakistan treats them only as tourist spots, from Gandhara. And from Gandhara, it goes into Afghanistan, and Buddhism spreads into China and Iran and China. So that is our first relationship with Buddhism. And you will be surprised to know that was 7th, 8th century. After that, the first Muslim scholars, the first Muslims to write about Buddhism, were writing about Buddhism in 11th to 14th century. 11th or 12th to 14th and 15th century. Al-Biruni wrote about Hinduism, very well, phenomenology. He was the first phenomenologist of religion. What is a phenomenologist of religion? It means to study other from their own perspective without making judgments. So the best book on Hinduism in that time, in the 12th century, is by Al-Biruni. And he did not just write by reading somebody else's work. He studied Sanskrit and he stayed in the temples, and he had no fears. This is scholarship, and that's how Muslims came to know Hinduism. The second scholar who comes after him is Ash-Shahrastani in the 12th century. He wrote a whole book, Kitab al-Milal wa Nihal, and there is a section on Ara al-Hind, the views of the Indians. In that book, he talks about the Buddha. And you'll be surprised, today's generation, that very well, the Quran says Allah has sent his prophets in every place and in every language. And Allah says in the Quran that he mentions some prophets and some prophets are not mentioned. So if you go to a common Muslim people and you ask them how many prophets are there, and they'll say 1,124,000 prophets. But do you have the list of them? Of course, the Quran cannot list all 124,000 prophets because the Quran is not a dictionary of religion. But Quran says that there are prophets in every place and in every language. So taking that cue, Asharastani writes about the early contact between Islam and Buddhism. And he even says the Buddha could be one of the prophets. I will come to that a little more further in my lecture before I go to the Rohingya issue. Then you after this, and Asharastani, after him comes Rashid al-Hamdani. He also wrote a book called Jamia Tawarik, the Chronicles of History. And you will be surprised. You see, the Buddha statues which you see today, you watch today, were not produced during the time of the Buddha. They were produced 500 years after the Buddha died, when the Greeks came to India. And Asharastani in his book, Rashid al-Hamdani in his book has a whole section on the Buddha, and there are paintings of Buddha receiving enlightenment. After him comes another scholar who also writes another book called Jamia Tawarik. And he also draws the paintings of the Buddha's liberation, Buddha's enlightenment. And so until 15th century, we have understanding scholars, Muslim scholars studying Sanskrit, Pali, and writing about Buddhism and Hinduism. But then it stops until today. And from that time on, we become dependent on Western sources to study Buddhism. Now, I am not going to talk about the theologies, or I'm not going to discuss about the metaphysics. But for me, whatever I've studied of Buddhism, for me, Islam and Buddhism are two religions of liberation or social justice, as you're talking about. How Prophet Muhammad is the great liberator of humanity, who talks about who is known as Rahmatul lil Alameen. He brings mercy. So, of course, we believe, Muslims believe in Tawheed. But if you see what is the main role of Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is that he liberates the Arabs from tribalism, which is coming back in many ways again and again. He liberates human beings from slavery, the great curse of that time. He liberates women who were babies who were being killed, female infanticide. So the basic message of Islam is social justice. Professor Fazlur Rahman defines Tawheed as moralistic monotheism. Monotheism directed by morality. It is because morality and monotheism go together. Allah says in the Quran, if there were many gods, there would be chaos in the world. So when you have one God, when you believe in one Allah, of course there is oneness, one is equality, there is justice, which your mission is all about. Buddha does the same thing. Buddha liberates human beings from, at that time, they had this Hindu practice of sacrificing hundreds of cows and cattle. And that's why Buddha talks about ahimsa, or non-violence. The main message of Buddha is ahimsa, non-violence. And also he liberates people from casteism, which was a curse in India. Muhammad Iqbal has written a very important 2 poems on the Buddha. People don't know about it. One poem is titled Nanak in Javed Nama. You should read it. It's in Urdu. And he says, I don't have the whole Urdu text here. It's available on Javed Nama, also online. And he says the voice of the Buddha was the voice of Haqq, but India didn't understand it. He has another poem. It's called Tahsin-e-Gautam or Talimat-e-Gautam. And in that also he praises high praises for the Buddha. But unfortunately in our educational system, we have lost, or we don't understand that Islam is a world civilization. For me, Islam is a religion which is pluralist of all religions. You know very well, they talk about exclusivism and inclusivism and religious pluralism. We don't need these words. These are all coming from Christian theology. Actually, the first person to use the word exclusivism, inclusivism, religious pluralism is Alan Race. He's a professor in England. He's a Christian theologian. But Islam never had this issue. Lakum dinukum waliyadin. You follow your way, we follow our way. And Allah, and fastabiqul khairat, compete to do good. So differences of religion is not an issue for Islam. So coming from that perspective, so what I was trying to say is that from the 12th to 15th century, Muslims have studied Buddhism. But you'll be surprised to know, I just mentioned to you about 3 great books written by Muslim scholars. You'll be surprised to know that the first book by a Western scholar or a Christian scholar on Buddhism was written in 1844, in the 19th century. So from 15th century to today, 900 years, I bet it, I challenge everybody, there is no one Muslim scholar of Buddhism today. So we don't understand them, they don't understand us. And there is no one Buddhist scholar of Islam. Why has this happened? This has happened because of the colonial disruption. This has happened because of colonializers who divided and separated people living along lines of religions and ethnicity and cultures. So we abandoned the study of other religions. So now we are suffering for 900 years, but I'm living in Thailand for 28 years and they have so many problems. Rohingya is one of them. There's an issue in Sri Lanka, as Dr. Zahid just mentioned. There's an issue in Thailand. I believe there is coming what I call as Asian Islamophobia. I call it Asian Islamophobia. People are not looking at it. Even Professor John Esposito doesn't. I had a meeting with him recently in Malaysia. Yes, what is Asian Islamophobia? Asian Islamophobia is Islamophobia from the back door. Our back door is open. It is coming from Japan, from Korea, from all these Asian countries, Buddhist countries, who are studying about Islam from Western sources. How? Most of the books about Islam written by Western scholars are translated into Japanese, into Korean, into Thai, into many other languages, and they are reading them. But we are not even talking with them. So there is a kind of a gap. We are not engaging with them. In fact, you see, I just mentioned to you that they were called as Ahl al-Kitab. And Buddhism for me is not a shirk religion. What happens is that whenever we see any Buddhist doing like this to a Buddha statue, we think that they are praying to the Buddha. They are not praying to the Buddha. They're saying we are paying respect. We are paying homage to the Buddha. And Buddha himself says, don't deify me. It will be very interesting to know. Just Nabi Muhammad says, don't deify me. Before the Buddha died, his disciples asked, what will we do after you leave us? He says, I will leave behind me two things as your guides. One is the Dharma, that is the teaching, which is eternal, and the Vinaya, the discipline, the way, my way. Nabi Muhammad says the same thing. I am leaving behind me the Quran and the Sunnah. So there are many common grounds which we can work, but unfortunately we have abandoned. I believe that even people like here in the US, you have many Buddhists here, where you have many people of Shinto and Taoism religion which you have to engage with. Many times I write about Islam and Buddhism. I have several articles, you can Google them, they're available online. Whenever I talk to my friends that I want to make a presentation on Islam and Buddhism, and they say we are not interested, we only want to talk to Jews and Christians. But you will be surprised to know that when the Christians came to Asia, they said, Donald Lopez has a very interesting book. Donald Lopez is a professor at the University of Michigan. He has a very good book titled From Stone to Flesh. When the Christians came to Asia and they saw Buddhism, they said Buddhism is an idolatrous religion of idolatry. And they also said that Buddhism is a bigger challenge to Christianity than Islam. Why? Because Buddhism is from India to Japan. The geographic space is larger than that of the Middle East. You get me? So they said we have to conquer a bigger land. They also said, when they saw the Buddha statues, they said, that I'm not making this all up, it's all there, right? They said the Buddha is an African. You're making your face, right? Why Buddha is an African? I would say it's a surprising face. They said the Buddha is an African. You know why? No, it's okay. It's fine, right? Yeah. Buddha, why is Buddha is an African? Because they saw the Buddha statues with curled hair, curly hair. If you see any statue of the Buddha, Buddha has a curled hair. So they say he's of an African origin, African Buddha. Actually, in Buddhist art, the curled hair is seen as a symbol of an enlightened person. Because the enlightenment, or even the Wahi, it is something, is a very deep religious experience. So they depict the Buddha in that way. Of course, later on they came to know that it is a wrong theory. But no Muslims has ever said that. Asharastani, Hamdani, and many other scholars, Al-Biruni, they never said anything negative of Buddhism. So let me fast forward now, okay? Having given this background, Rohingya have become certainly an important issue. So what I'm trying to say is that Asian Islamophobia is existing, and is existing from Myanmar to Japan. Why Japan? Why? The Taliban destruction of the Buddha statues has hurt them very much. They are not going to go out and shout, like we do when we protest anything happens. They are hurt in their heart. They're really hurt, the blowing off. So, blowing off of the Bamiyan Buddha statues. So I say that the Muslims made our relation with Buddhism famous in two ways. First is that for the 400 years, the Bamiyan statues were there in Afghanistan. We didn't care about it. We preserved it. We never thought it as a threat. So when they were blown up, everybody said, Muslims are violent. You see, Muslims are anti-heritage, anti-culture. So this is one issue. So when you come to the relations, the understanding of Islam among the Buddhists is that we are violent people. And this is sustained by the media, of course. And our media doesn't address these issues. So I'm coming fast forward to the Rohingya crisis. In Southeast Asia, there are 42% Muslims and 40% Buddhist. 42% Muslims, Indonesia, as I said to you. Now, Rohingya crisis, I heard about Rohingya crisis for the first time when I went there in about 30 years ago. And you'll be surprised to know that if you want to do any research about Rohingya, you have to begin with one book in English. It is titled The Muslim Communities of the Southern Philippines, Southern Thailand, and Western Burma, or Myanmar, and the Muslims of Burma. Now, this book, you'll be surprised to know, is written by a scholar called Moshe Yegar. Moshe Yegar was the second secretary at the Israel embassy in Rangoon in 1970s or 60s and 70s, around there. He wrote about them. And his basic principle there, argument is that these people are rebel in their own land. Just like the Israelis say the Palestinians are rebels in their own land. So that is the argument he begins with. And he wrote another book after that called The Muslims of Burma. So we have never studied the Rohingya. Actually, the history of Rohingya is the word Rohingya. To understand the word Rohingya, you have to go back to the Arakan kingdom. There's an old Burma. There are the Burma people who are majority. There is a Burma kingdom, and then there is the Arakan kingdom. And one of the kings of Burma, I'm not going to go into details, had attacked the Arakan kingdom. And the king of Arakan kingdom was a Buddhist, and he fled to Bengal. There was no East Pakistan at that time. There was no Bangladesh at that time. And that time, the king of Sultan Suleiman Shah of Bengal helped him reconquer his kingdom. So from that time, in the Arakan kingdom, there were Arakan Buddhists and Arakan Muslims. I'm talking about since the 8th and until today. They have coexisted for a long time. Then came the Burma, one more attack. No, let me go back to. So when Arakan king was able to win back his kingdom, you know what he did? He was so much impressed with Islam and Muslims that he started using Muslim titles for the royalty, for the monarchy. And he started even minting coins. On one side was written in the Rohingya, in the Arakan language. On the other side, there was the Kalima, La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah. You can find it in my articles I have written on that. And he was so impressed with Islam that Muslims and Buddhists were living together. Then the Burma attacked again in 1842 or somewhere there, and they took over the Arakan kingdom. And then the British came, and then they took over 1857 onwards, after they conquered in India. So if you go to Burma, there are 4 Muslim communities today. There are Indian Muslims who were brought by the British colonizers to do the trading in Burma. Second are the Chinese Muslims. The third are the children of intermarriage between the Muslims and the Buddhists. And the fourth is the Rohingya group. Now, the Rohingya group, now, Rohingya are Rohang, the word comes from Rohang. And actually, I prefer to call them Arakan Muslims than Rohingya, because there's a debate on this whole issue about when was this term came into being. So when we come fast forward, I'm fast forwarding here. So I was talking about the old kingdom there. So when I look, I have a report here, a British census report from 1875. From 1875, there's a report from British census report. It says that in Arakan, there are Arakan Muslims. They are the descendants of the voluntary immigrants at different periods from neighboring province of Chittagong. There was no border between Chittagong and Arakan kingdom. And the only difference between them, the Muslims, Arakan Muslims, and the Arakan Buddhists is not cultural but religious. Otherwise, their culture, their practices, their food is nearly the same. So so this is how the reports are coming. I'm talking about 1875 report. Then there are many other reports which says, yes, the Muslims, Arakan Muslims have been living there for a long time. But when we come to the end of colonial period, 1947, the Muslims, just like Muslims in India, felt insecure, so they wanted a country called Pakistan. They met Muhammad Ali Jinnah, right? Muhammad Ali Jinnah is the founder of Pakistan. The same Arakan Muslims were feeling insecure about their future in the new country which is going to be established, which name is Burma. So they met Muhammad Ali Jinnah and they said, we want to join East Pakistan. And Muhammad Ali Jinnah talked to General Aung San. General Aung San is the freedom fighter of Myanmar, of Burma at that time. He is the father of Aung San Suu Kyi. And there was an agreement, they met, they discussed this. So General Aung San promised Muhammad Ali Jinnah that no, there's no need to go to join East Pakistan. They will be protected and they will have their rights in a new country called Burma. But things did not turn out. General Aung San was killed just 6 months before the independence of Burma. And after that, the Burmese army took over power and it started persecuting all the minorities. So it's not only the Rohingya issue. There are other minorities, Christian minorities, other Buddhist minorities in Myanmar, and they started using Buddhism for racism. I call it Buddhist racism. So it is wrong on our part to say Buddhists are persecuting or Buddhism is against Islam. No, we don't have problem with the religion of Buddhism. We have the problem with the Burmese religious nationalists who are racist, who are against the Rohingya people and are denying their existence within the country of where they are native to. So Asian Islamophobia, which is spreading from India and everywhere else, is basically saying what? It is telling Asian Muslims who are living as minorities in India, in Myanmar, in Thailand, in Vietnam and other countries that no, you are foreigner just because you are a Muslim. So they are denying their Asianity. There's no such word, Asianity, in a dictionary. They are denying their Asianness. So they're saying, Islam came from Arabia, you are Muslim, so you should go to Pakistan or you should go to the Middle East. This is racism. And they are using their religion to assert what I call religious nationalism. And this issue has become very, very problematic. It has become problematic because of it is discrimination in the name of religion. Now, how do you do that? They do this. You'll have to tell me about the time. Okay, they do this by denying them citizenship. What they did in the case of the Rohingya is they started by denying them citizenship. In Myanmar, there are three types of citizenship. One is it's a three-tiered citizenship. One is one is full citizenship for those who are born and who are of Burmese race. Second is associate citizenship, and third is naturalized citizenship. The Rohingya have been denied that on the basis that they don't look like the Burmese. The Burmese are Mongoloids, and these people are Aryan, and their color of skin is different. So they are denied that. They are denied of this because of the rise of racism. In Myanmar, 87% of Myanmar population is Buddhist, 7% is Christian, 4% is Muslim. So what they are saying, the Burmese racists who have come up, they are saying that, oh, these Muslims will take over our country, which is scientifically and demographically totally illogical. You don't understand how can 4% people can take over a whole country. So this is just targeting the other. And this, as I said, is called Asian Islamophobia. And this Asian Islamophobia is coming from sources which are external. Now, Burma, after going under the military rule, and still until today, the military is very, very powerful. They just got democratic rights in 2015. So they have been targeting the Muslims as outsiders. And this is happening because we have abandoned not only studying, but even relationship with the Buddhist countries. And I always plead that we are entering into the age of Asia. India is rising, China is rising, and we don't have scholars who understand them. So this is a big challenge for us Muslim scholars, Muslim academics, Muslim. I say, fine, you do very good in helping disaster relief for the Rohingya, but this is not of no help. I've been to the Rohingya camp. These people are basically living like animals. I'm sorry to say that. We collect millions of dollars and millions of whatever money you have, and we are just feeding them. It is a bottomless pit. We just feed them, they eat, and they do normal life, okay? But are we helping them to sustain themselves? No Muslim country, as far as I know, is giving them scholarships. During the Bosnian crisis, even many universities gave scholarships to the Bosnians, and now they're able to sustain themselves democratically. So no Muslims university, as far as I know, maybe one or two people get into this, because these people are totally unskilled. So we have to give them scholarships to be educated, so that in professional science, even vocational skills and all, so that they start learning about themselves and they're able to sustain themselves. Second, if they sustain themselves and develop their human resource development, they will be able to claim their rights within democracy of Myanmar. So we need to have their human resource development, and also we need to strengthen join the democratic forces in Myanmar. We have no connection with them because one big mistake with the Muslim countries did is that they said, oh, we should take back the Nobel Prize of Aung San Suu Kyi. I said, no, you burned all the bridges with her, because she did not get her Nobel Prize for the Rohingya. She got it for democracy. So we should sustain the democratic forces in Myanmar, and then that's a possibility of solving this crisis of the Rohingya in the long term. No matter how much money you collect, they will not be able to sustain themselves. And we are also creating their mentality, which is going to become very dependent mentality, that they will start depending, that someone will come and help them. So these are the two challenges which we are facing. So gradually, since 2015, 2016, today they are stateless. Of the 7 billion people living on this earth, the Rohingya is a group of people, about 1 million or so, who have no citizenship rights. So you can understand their tragedy. I believe that we have to have a nice strategy where we can understand and help them. Because what these people are doing is they are creating what I call, not me, what Professor Appadurai calls the fear of small numbers. Those who don't like Rohingya, or those who don't like minorities in India or in any other country, they're saying the minorities are going to take us over. And it is creating the geography of anger. So these angry racists who are using religion, and this is Buddhist religious nationalism, and this has a transnational alliance. It is arising, as Dr. Zahid said, from Sri Lanka, Myanmar, and Thailand. Thailand is a little bit different case, but in Sri Lanka there is a direct opposition to the presence of Muslims over there. In Myanmar, there is a direct opposition to the presence of Muslims there. So we have to understand of how are we going to deal with this issue in a peaceful way. There are many challenges. The citizenship law has to be changed, but it is difficult because according to the new law, 25% of the seats in the parliament of Burma are reserved for the army. Now the army is not going to allow any citizenship law changes. So whatever Kofi Annan is trying to do, or Aung San Suu Kyi is trying to do, it will be very, very difficult. I know they are nationalist leaders, and Aung San Suu Kyi has her own nationalist agenda. So we have to develop a new strategy to understanding this. To how can we play into, how can we address this issue? The former Prime Minister of Malaysia, Najib Razak, he was very right. He told the ASEAN countries that if you don't solve the problem of Myanmar, of the Rohingya, soon it will become like Afghanistan. And this is what should not happen, because Southeast Asia is the only region of the world which has developed all over, and which has developed, and it should not lead to new area of Muslim crisis. Muslims as majorities and minorities are facing problem all over the world. We don't want another problem coming up, of which we have no experience of how to deal with. So we have lots of challenges. And my final point is that it cannot be addressed only by disaster management. Thank you very much.
So, do we have any questions?
That was very fast.
I would ask them, for example, in Muslim American here, we, under the leadership of U.S. Council of Muslim Organization and ICNA Council for Social Justice, that's also part of that. We have a diplomatic initiative. So we met with Burmese embassy, the whole staff, and we talk about that we like to go for
visit,
welfare and for visit. But it's a good meeting, and we thought that 3 points will be agreed upon, but ultimately so they asked that we should condemn the August 24 massacre as a terrorist act. So what other is, and normally Muslims are very angry on that issue. They are giving a lot of money, millions of dollars to relief organizations. But living here, what can Muslims do to help that issue or resolve that issue, and also help those Rohingya Muslims or Arakan Muslims?
Yeah. First thing, it's very interesting when you tell me that you met the Burmese embassy or the Burmese government. Burmese government, since its independence, has always been isolationist policy. It did not join the Commonwealth. It did not join many of international organizations, because it is a country of a people who feel that they are themselves, and this country belongs to themselves. Because the Burmese independence movement, known as Dobama movement, which says that Burma is for the Burmese only. So it is a very difficult challenge of how to address it. Yes, we collect a lot of millions of money, but we need also strategy. And I think if we go and work with the democratic forces, democratic groups, and there are many of them within Burma, and we align with them and advocate the rights of the minorities, that is one strategy you have to have. So you need to have ground level or NGO activity relationship with the Burmese, because in Burma, I teach Burmese monks actually. I mean many Buddhist monks. Within Burma, there is a difference between the Shan and the Karen and the Karani and Chin and Kachin. Even within Buddhists of Burma, there are different groups. For example, the Shan, they don't have their own democratic rights. The Mon, they don't have democratic rights. So among them, there are democratic forces. So you have to align with them. And there are many Christian groups who are working also in that area. So Burmese government, they're nice people. They will smile with you. They will welcome you. But they will ask you, this is basically like Israel saying, you condemn this, and then we will allow you to do that. The diplomatic relations between Israel and Burma are very strong. The diplomatic relations between Israel and Singapore are very strong. So we have to have more understanding of the foreign policy of Burma and how they see themselves. So the only way now, as I see, is to, as I said, if there are Rohingya displaced people in Bangladesh, there are many of them in Malaysia. In Malaysia, there are many, but they work only at the level of cleaners, street cleaners, or working in labor. We have to help their children to gain knowledge. It is a long-term strategy. We need to help them, human resource development. And secondly, we have to join forces with the democratic forces who want to sustain democracy in Myanmar, because Myanmar is still ruled by the military. So it is a challenge which we have to think together and think at a global level. I don't think any of the Arab countries are interested. I'm going to be very frank. The biggest network provider in Myanmar is Ooredoo. It belongs to Qatar. Okay? And the Arab countries are not interested in Asian Muslim issues. I'm sorry, I'm talking very frankly. They're not interested in what is happening in Myanmar or in Sri Lanka. You know, they see these things as remote. So I'm here talking about social justice. For them, of course, why are they not interested? Because they have their problems. They have their own problems already in the Middle East. So it is the responsibility of Muslims in Asia. But we have not to be angry. I agree with you. We have to be able to build understanding. Forget dialogue. I say dialogue is very far. We have to start building understanding of them. And Islam Buddhist relation has strong cultural resources on which we can build on. I'm giving a little long answer. The Buddha talks about the middle path, and the Quran talks about ummatan wasatan. I've written a paper on dialogue between Islam and Buddhism through ummatan wasatan and Majjhima Patipada, the middle way of the Buddha. I have another paper which is published and is titled Bodhisattva and Insan al-Kamil. Nabi Muhammad as a perfect example of a perfect human being. Of course, he has a struggle. And how the Buddha is also as a Bodhisattva who becomes enlightened. I have another paper which is published on title Noor-e-Muhammadi and Tathagata, the Noor of Muhammad as Rahmatul lil Alameen. So there are many areas which we can work on. Even the idea of Buddha nature and Risala and Nabuwa. So I think it's time we started working on these issues.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.